What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. First of all, if you're new here, my name is Mac Candy and I'm currently traveling all around the world making travel videos of my experiences, things to do, and so much more. But first thing I want to say is this video is going to be a little bit different than my usual videos, but I wanted to add it to my channel because it was a very special travel experience. I would consider it probably my worst travel experience. However, looking back at it, it was kind of a fun adventure and it was a unique experience overall. So hope you guys enjoy the video. It's kind of a funny story how many hoops I had to get through and hurdles I had to jump, so let's get right into it. So back in February, I was on my way to Dubai, leaving Cozumel on a Sunday, and I was thinking I was going to be in Dubai in about 17 hours. I had 3 connections. It was going to be Cozumel to Houston, Houston over to Frankfurt, and Frankfurt to Dubai, and that was going to get me to my final destination of Dubai. But of course, things don't always go as planned. So I took my first flight from Cozumel to Houston on that Sunday, and I had about a 2-hour window when I would have a layover and then get on my next flight over to Frankfurt. And so somehow within those 2 hours, the airport completely shut down. My flight was canceled because Houston was experiencing a snowstorm. Guys, this has been one of my craziest travel experiences. I left Cozumel yesterday, and obviously traveling during the pandemic, I had to time out getting my PCR COVID test in order to make it. I made it to Houston, Texas, where I was warned in advance saying, hey, like there's gonna be a snowstorm there, but I didn't think much of it, so I didn't change my United flight when they sent me the notification to. Then, of course, I'm waiting at the airport, and the flight gets canceled. And then I'm like, oh crap, well, like if the flight gets canceled, that means I'm gonna need a new PCR test, blah, blah, blah. So I called United anxiously. First of all, that is my tip for you guys. If you run into a cancellation, everyone rushes to the desk, the closest desk, and there are always long lines. Maybe you'll be lucky and you'll be the first one there, wonderful. But what I always do is I actually call the airline while I'm walking over to the line. Whoever picks up first, whether it's via the phone or if I get to the counter and I end up being the first one there, I'm guaranteeing a faster opportunity to be the one that maybe gets on the next flight out in case there's only a few seats left. So that's my tip for you guys. But anyways, back to the story. Called United anxiously. I was able to change my flight to the next day to go to Denver and then go to Frankfurt and then go to Dubai. Then by the time I checked into the hotel that I was gonna stay at for the night, that flight got canceled. So I got on a new flight, but it meant that I had to stay another night. Then that Marriott that's at the hotel or at the airport, that got completely booked. And then the next morning at 9:30 this morning, I tried to get an Uber. All Ubers shut down. I tried to get a Lyft. All Lyfts shut down. This is here in Houston, Texas, because this is the worst snowstorm, the most amount of snow they've gotten since the 1800s. Like, this is unbelievable this is happening. And now I'm literally riding around in an empty airport because Texas is under a state of emergency from this snowstorm. I've already gone and saw the United lady, and she got me on a flight. She's like, you just need to get out of Texas. Like, you need to get out of Texas because you're not going to be able to get a PCR test because they're not going to be able to ship that to the lab. So now I'm literally going to Terminal E just to see if I can get a cab so that way I can get another hotel at a different place, because right now I can't get to another hotel even though I don't have a booking at the one that I'm currently at. So like literally right now I have to sleep in the airport or somewhere like on the floor because there's nowhere to go. Like I can't get a ride to a different place. My hotel that I was staying at last night's booked. All of this is going on, and so we shall see if I ever make it to Dubai. This is an unreal experience though. Like, I think this is probably the first time that I've ever been in a travel situation where there's literally nowhere to go or anything I can even do because the whole city's shut down and I can't like fly to another city right now. So just unbelievable. Now my flight's been canceled again. I'm starting to get messages from people on Instagram like, hey, it's a pretty big snowstorm coming. And by big, it was actually quite small, but it's Texas. Texas never gets snow. And they just simply don't have the equipment, right? Because why would Texas have a bunch of snow removal equipment when they're never going to use it? So in the once in a blue moon when it does happen, it's a catastrophe basically. So at this point, I am like, whatever, I can't do anything about it. And so the next morning I go over to the United terminal. There is nobody in there, and I mean nobody. Well, I guess talking to United's not an option. There's not a single person in this airport. Literally, like I'm the only person in here. Unbelievable. And I'm like, okay, what is going on right now? There's not a single person here at the first United terminal I went to. Then I made my way over to another terminal just to get off and see if this was the right one, and the alarm's going off. And I'm like, this is like a zombie apocalypse. I walked into another terminal, there's nobody here and the alarms are just going off. It was just bizarre. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep looking for another terminal. Finally, I find another terminal where I am able to speak with a United Airlines lady who puts me on a flight later that day, which is the next option, right? And I believe that one was to Denver, Denver to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Dubai. As you can probably guess, this trend continues, and that flight got canceled very quickly after she put me on it and I left the ticket counter. But the problem at this point was I went back to the hotel desk, this was maybe around noon, and said, hey, I need to stay here another night. And she's like, sorry, everyone's trying to stay at this hotel. We're fully booked. And I'm like, oh no, you gotta be kidding me. So I just stayed in my hotel room a little bit longer because I don't know what to do at this point, because now I don't know when I'm gonna get on the next flight. And I'm getting kicked out of the hotel room. Now keep in mind though, you would think I could just go to another hotel, but the problem is I couldn't. Now it's mid-snowstorm. All Ubers, all taxis, all lifts are shut down. Nobody's driving to and from the airport. It is literally me versus the world at this point. And I'm like, this is a catastrophe for me because I'm gonna have to sleep in the airport. It's not that big of a catastrophe. I could have just slept in the airport. I don't mean to make it sound like it was the end of the world, because it wasn't. But at the time, you know, like, I'm about to get kicked out of a room. I don't know where I'm going to go. It was a bit stressful at the time, but I was still taking it easy, you know. It wasn't the end of the world, and I didn't have any specific time frame that was requiring me to be in Dubai. So yeah, then I end up waiting in the room like 2 more hours, and luckily the phone rings from the hotel and they're like, all right, we actually had a cancellation, you can stay in your room. So I got another night there. And this happened a couple more days where I am basically trying to get on every flight and it's getting canceled. Every flight I call on, it's getting canceled. I'm calling United.
Can I help you today?
Hi, yes, I'm calling because I had a couple flights that have been canceled. I wanted to see if you could help me figure out what other options there are.
Sure, may I know the confirmation or ticket number, please?
I'm on hold for like 2 hours at a time. Sometimes they would just hang up as soon as I would wait 2 hours. Basically, at this point, I'm not really having any luck. I don't know which flight I'm gonna be on. I don't really know what's going on with the weather. So I realized it probably just makes sense to just chill and stop thinking about it. Because the more I think about it, the more I try and fix it, the further I am away from getting to a solution. So I'm good with that. Basically, I was able to get another night in this hotel. It freed up after enough persistence and asking, and I was about to check out. Finally, they called me and said, oh, we have a room for you. Do you just want to extend that one? And I was like, yes, please. So luckily I have at least another place to stay at tonight, and that's all I need for now, so I can get a little bit of work done. But one thing I want to tell you guys, if there's anything I've learned from this absolutely ridiculous experience here, the reality is don't take life too seriously. You're always going to run into complications. There's always going to be things that you don't expect that are going to totally change your plans, totally throw a wrench in your tires. But the reality is that's life. And when you look back at it and you follow the journey, you realize that's some of the most fun parts of it. So enjoy it and don't get too upset over things that don't actually matter in the grand scale of things. Finally, it was Wednesday morning and the airports seemed to have finally opened up, which meant I was going to be able to fly out, I think. But keep in mind, I'm traveling mid-pandemic, so I needed another COVID test. The COVID test that I took the previous Friday had expired because in order to get into Dubai, at the time, you needed a negative COVID-19 PCR test 72 hours prior to your last leg of the flight, which was going to be Frankfurt to Germany. At this point, obviously it had expired, so I needed to now go out in this somewhat recovering city of Houston and find a COVID test that I could get the results on same day so I could fly out that evening. All right guys, and today is my 4th day here in the Houston airport, stuck in transit from what was originally supposed to be a 1 hour and 45 minute connection has turned into 4 days. Now, things keep getting more and more complicated because every single day my flights have been getting canceled, which means I haven't been able to go get a PCR test. Now I think I finally found a day when my flight's not going to get canceled, and now I'm frantically trying to find a PCR COVID test. So I'm actually currently waiting for an Uber right now to see if the place that United didn't necessarily recommend, but I saw a sticker for it saying if you need same-day testing, here's where you can go, but it didn't say if it was PCR or rapid testing. So we shall see how these things progress, but I am not getting my hopes up because another night in the hotel could be very possible. It's been an interesting ride here, but to say the least, my problems are minuscule compared to what the rest of Texas is worrying about, so I'm blessed to have a place to stay here in a hotel the last couple nights. That said, guys, my Uber's here to go get a ride over to a COVID test, so we shall see if it's possible. And yes, as you can probably imagine, I went to multiple places around Houston, spending quite a bit of money on an Uber to find a location where I could simply just get a COVID test and be on my way. At first I went to a couple COVID specific testing labs. They ended up being closed and they weren't answering on the phone, so I figured I would just chance it, but once again they were closed, so I went to a hospital. The hospital I went to, I waited a little while in the emergency room because that was the only division that was open. Basically they said there's no way you could get a COVID test and get your results back. Not even if you actually had symptoms could you get your results back this quickly. So I was like, shoot, well now I'm just out of luck. So I waited around, got an Uber back to the airport. Then I ended up talking to one of my friends, my two friends, Becky and Ross, and they were like, why don't you fly to DC, stay here for a couple days, get your COVID test, and then continue on your route. So I'm like, all right, whatever. At this point, I had been told by multiple airline agents on the phone, like, you just need to get out of Houston, get out of Texas. That's where the snowstorms are. There's going to be problems backed up for a while there. So then I go to the United area, I get put on a DC flight, and I have about like 1 hour till that flight departs. So I sprint from this terminal back to my hotel room, get all my stuff anxiously packed, and I'm like going against the clock right now. I'm telling you, like 1 hour to run there, pack everything up, and my stuff kind of blew up at this point because I was living in the hotel room for 3 days. And it's not like packing for me is easy. I travel with just a backpack and a suitcase, which, yes, it doesn't sound like a lot of stuff, but I actually have to fit everything in there perfectly, like a game of Tetris where you can't even have one block wrong in order to fit everything in there. So I'm doing it as quickly as possible. They're texting me like, oh, are you gonna make it? Are you gonna make it? And yeah, fast forward a little bit of time, I made it onto the flight and I couldn't even believe it. It was literally like a hallelujah playing in my ears when I was boarding that plane and when I actually took off. And then once I made it to DC, it was a blessing in disguise because I was able to spontaneously see my good friends Becky and Ross, spend 2 days here, get a COVID test. But of course, a snowstorm comes in here. Luckily, DC's a little bit more equipped for it, so the snowstorm didn't really slow me down, and I was already doing a 2-day layover in Washington D.C, so I would have that time to get the COVID test, get the results back, and then continue on my way. After the last 2 days here in DC, the journey continues trying to get to Dubai. If I do get on tonight's flight, which is at 5:30 p.m. to Frankfurt, I might actually make it to Dubai by Sunday, which will have been a solid 7 days. But the silver lining is I got to spend the last 2 days with two of my favorite people and my new favorite pup. He's a TikTok star now too. So we'll see you at the airport as the adventure continues. So yeah, I left DC on that Friday, was able to make it over to the airport without any issues with the snowstorm. And of course when I get there, the United lady's just giving me a hard time. I don't know why or for what reason, but she's just like, you need a visa to get into Dubai. You can't go to Dubai, like, what's your reason? And I was explaining to her, you know, I moved from place to place creating content, so I'm going to live there for a bit. And so she's like, okay, well you need a visa for that. I was like, well, no, I'm going as a tourist. She's like, well, I thought you said you're gonna live there. I was like, well, my life's kind of complicated. I go and live in a place for like a month at a time. It's not really living, it's still holidaying by definition, but I take videos of the place and I make content of it and then move on to the next spot. Yeah, after speaking to her for a bit, she finally lets me through, but I was like, do I have some sort of curse where I'm not supposed to go to Dubai? And a lot of people had told me, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but a lot of people told me like, you just aren't meant to go to Dubai, because I actually tried to go to Dubai 2 months ago in December, but I happened to get COVID like 36 hours before I took off. Right before I was gonna leave to Dubai, I ended up picking it up and got my results back right before I was gonna leave. So it was like this was take 3, take 4, take 5. I mean, how many times have I tried to go to Dubai in the last few days, plus back in December. It was just like, wow. Everyone was messaging me like, dude, you're not supposed to go to Dubai, like, do you not see all these signs? But I was like, at this point I was so chilled out about everything. I was like, I'm just going with the flow. I'm enjoying this experience. It's something else, but like, I'm gonna get there sooner or later. So yeah, I made it into the airport and I still wasn't going to believe it until I got on that flight to Frankfurt. And so yeah, flew to Frankfurt, got there, had a couple hour layover, and I remember like waiting in that line and the kid in front of me, when they were checking the COVID test right at the gate from Frankfurt to Dubai, his was denied, and I couldn't hear why, but I was like, geez, what is the issue now? And so I was like, there's gonna be something wrong. I'm just thinking, I'm like, I'm in Frankfurt, they're gonna ship me back to DC because something's wrong with the COVID test. Travel update here, I am in Frankfurt and it is Saturday midday. I'm about to be hopping on my final flight, the final leg to get to Dubai. Just had my COVID test approved and stamped. So that means I think I'm finally gonna make it after almost a full week-long journey here. Good news is the weather is looking quite good here, so I expect to make it on this flight. And wow, I can't believe it. I was starting to think that I wasn't gonna make it to Dubai. Hopefully I'm not jinxing it right now though. But this has been the craziest journey ever. Like, I don't know, I'm pretty surprised that I had the patience to go through all of it, but it's made for some amazing content, that's for sure. People have been pretty entertained with all the crap that's happened to me in this time. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if the plane went down yesterday when I was flying over the Atlantic a few hours ago. But we made it, we're here, and got a few hours in Frankfurt. Now the next challenge is going to be figuring out how I am going to get a place for a good price, because it's super expensive in Dubai to get a last minute place. Like, the places I had picked out, they're all gone, and the other ones that are still available just aren't very great and they're way more expensive. So as always, if you can, book in advance, but if you're traveling in severe weather storms plus a pandemic, that might not be possible. So be careful when you are booking in advance, because you don't want to get screwed over even more. So yeah, after that, I made it to Dubai late that night. I couldn't believe I was finally there, because it had been 7 days that I was in transit, from the snowstorm to the COVID test to all of the different complications, hours and hours and hours on hold. You would think in that 7 days I got caught up on a lot of editing, but no, I was spending so much time trying to get to Dubai that I wasn't even able to get that much work done. But it was an experience, and it was just one of those things I had to document and put on a video. Don't take life too seriously. These things happen. I had quite a realization while I was there that I was like, things could be worse. I've got a hotel room. There's a lot of people in Houston right now that don't have electricity. People had even died from the snowstorm. So I was actually very grateful that I was in the situation that I am. And I made it to Dubai, and it was a pretty crazy, funny, enjoyable story to just all of a sudden be in this airport that is one of the biggest airports in the US, and all of a sudden nobody was there. Alarms were going off. I was getting locked in the airport. Nobody was around. It was just, I'm repeating myself, but it was just so bizarre that all of this happened in a 2-hour window that I was connecting there. Just a quick stop was all it was supposed to be, and so it was just, it's crazy. But at the end of the day, then I have extra content. One thing I want to leave you with though, guys, is I always get insurance. Honestly, it's because I always need it, and I feel like I always get my money's worth when I pay for it, because I always have claims. So I actually have insurance, travel insurance with World Nomads, different from World Nomac, but yeah, I pay a pretty decent amount for it, but it covers quite a bit. Luckily, I was covered for this. I didn't have the best policy they had, so it didn't cover everything, but it covered about $500 of the $980 I spent. So it was a full week living in Houston/DC, and yeah, most of it was covered, which was great. So I recommend you guys to check out World Nomads. This isn't like a sponsored by them video. It's just simply I had this situation, and thankfully I was able to file a claim with them and at least get half my money back, because I normally don't stay in expensive hotel rooms. Not because I necessarily can or can't afford it, it's just simply I can always find places for much cheaper. and so I like to get a great deal. But this time around, my hands were tied. But like I said, guys, check them out. I'll drop a link in the description. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this really interesting and unique video of my travel experience getting to Dubai. And so guys, that wraps up this video. Hope you enjoyed that travel story. In my next set of vlogs, it'll be back to the usual things to do, cost of living, and travel guides, specifically here in Dubai. And I have so much great content that I filmed while I was in Dubai, so make sure you stick around and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you don't miss what's coming in Dubai. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you in the next video.